Alright guys, this is the weekly check number 7 relearning video. So if you're watching this, it is part of the Delta Math relearning assignment. We're just going to go through a few problems here. That way you kind of know where to start with each type of problem you'll see in this assignment. The first thing that we're going to look at is a proportional table here. And I'm asking you to give the constants and the equations. So the big thing is that you should have 3 constants and 2 equations. So your constants, remember, because we're going to end up getting a number that we're multiplying in between all these numbers here, we can write that number 3 different ways now since we're in our percent unit. So we can write it as a decimal, a fraction, or a percent. So the first thing you're going to have to do is divide backwards. So you're going to do 6 divided by 8. And that gives you your decimal constant of 0.75. Now, if you know how to read that fraction, it is 75 hundredths. So the way you read the the decimal is the fraction. 75 hundredths is 75 out of 100. But then we would want to reduce that to 3 out of 4. For that one, you can do second PRB on your calculator after getting the 0.75. And it will give you the 3/4. You could also think of quarters. 75 out of 100, 75 cents out of $1 will be 3 out of 4 quarters. And then as a percent, remember, out of 100 means percent. So this would be 75%. Or if you remember right here, you can just move that decimal 2 times to the right. The first 2 numbers are your percent. All right, and then with our equations, the reason there's only 2 is because in math we don't use the percent in our equation. So we have 2 equations, y equals 0.75x and y equals 3/4 x. Either one of those would work. All right, the next piece is being able to determine if an equation is increasing or decreasing, and then by what percent. They're pretty easy to recognize. It's just finding that percent that might be a little tricky. Anything that has a 1 with it is going to be an increase. So the reason for that is that the 1 represents the full amount, the 100%, and then you're adding to that. It's easy to see how much it increased because, again, the 1 represents the 100% plus whatever else is your percent increase. So it would be 26%. The decreasing equations aren't as easy to see. They're easy to spot because they have a 0 in front, meaning that it's less than 1 or 100%. That's why it goes down. But they're a little more tricky because we have to think if we started at 1 or 100 and went down to 43, there's actually some subtraction involved there to figure out how much. So you're going to do 100 minus that 43 that's there, and that gives you 57%. All right, and then the last few we're going to do here are just finding missing pieces from a table. So you've got an old, a new, and a percent increase or decrease. So you should be able to find any of them given the other 2, no matter if it's old or new, working forwards or backwards. So this first one, last weekend, the movie theater sold 870 tickets to comedies. This weekend, they sold 1,131 or 1131. By what percent did their comedy tickets increase? So before I even really start doing math, if I read this problem, if I just look at it, I see no percent sign. Okay? That means we are looking for that percent. So that would be what we're trying to find here. And then we know with old and new, if it's a time, you want to think what happened first. So we're talking about last weekend and this weekend. So last weekend is going to be our original, and then it increased from there. So 870 goes here, and then 1131 goes there. So your goal here is going to be finding a constant first, because that's going to help you figure out what to multiply 100 by, because we're going from 100 forward to the yellow, so we're going to be multiplying. But we have to know what to multiply in order to get there. So you're going to find the constant by dividing backwards with 1131 and 870. So 1131 divided by 870, that's going to give you 1.3. So right there, let's see, 1131 divided by 870, and that gave us 1.3. That is your constant. So then you have to decide if you're multiplying or dividing. And since, like I said, we're going forward from the 100, we would be multiplying. So then you're going to take that number and multiply by 100, and that's going to give you 130. So for this one, we were multiplying. And then remember, it said by what percent did it increase? It went from 100% to 130. So you're not thinking about the 100 that's with the 30. You're thinking, okay, my 100 went up 30. That is the percent. 30% increase. Your answer there. All right, next one here. It says last year. That's a key word. Last year means old. An airline averaged 10 minutes delay for each flight. This year, the airline is averaging 60% longer delays. What is the current year's average flight delay? So we're looking for the current year, that we're looking for that new or current, okay? Last year, remember, would refer to like old. So it started as 10, and then this says averaging 60%. Remember, you're gonna have to start with 100%. I can't stress that enough. If you are given a percent, you have to figure out what this means. The airline is averaging 100 or 60% longer. So 60 is not going to go here because that would be a decrease if you go from 100 down to 60. It's 100% plus the 60% increase. That's going to give you 160 there. And remember, your new percent, or your new, once you do the increase, that is your constant. So your constant is 160% or 1.6. If you are not sure how to get that number, it's okay. Once you've added the 160, if you don't know how I did that, all you have to do is divide backwards. So 160 divided by 100, and it'll give you that same number, okay? So then again, we're missing a number here. We're going to go forward to get that number. So we're going to be multiplying by 10 to get this year's average delay. So you're going to do 10 or 1.6 here times 10, and that's going to give you 16 minutes. 16 minutes average flight delay. All right, last one. It says Chloe attends a private school where she has to wear a uniform. This year, her uniforms cost $64.40. This is a 15% increase from last year. How much did last year's cost? Alright, so this is kind of tricky to place our numbers here. But before I even start, I see this right here. 15% increase. So we're going to start with 100%. And then you have to ask yourself, what is happening? So 15% increase, we're going to do 100% plus 15%. That's going to give us 115 for that new. And then you're going to be using the constant that we just found, which is 115%. And that's 1.15. You're going to use that constant to multiply or divide. We got to figure out where this other number goes. So it says this year it is 64.40. But that's an increase from last year. So 64.40 is our big number because that increased from last year. So last year is our old, and that's what it's asking us, is how much did last year's cost? So we're actually looking for the original here. The 64.40 is going to go here. And we already said our constant was 1.15. Again, if you're not sure how to get that, once you've added the 15% to get 115% right here, that is your constant. And percent means out of 100, or you can divide backwards in the table. Both ways you divide by 100. So you do 115 divided by 100, and that gives us the 1.15. Okay, so then you're going to be trying to figure out how to go backwards. And when we're going backwards, we're always going to divide. Backwards to find last year. So we're going to take our 64.40 and we're going to divide by that 100 or 1.15, and that's going to give us 56. So last year uniforms cost $56. And then always, just as a general rule, don't forget to ask yourself, does my answer make sense? This year it was 64.40, and that was an increase from last year. So, and it wasn't a huge increase, just a 15% increase. So yes, it makes sense that last year's would be a little bit less than that since this year increased. All right, guys, thanks for taking the time to listen.